This is section 5 of part 1 of our Vectorworks drafting tutorial. In this section, we're going to be entering the line set schedule of the system pipes into our theater. It starts on page 21 of the written tutorial. So we're going to say that in this theater, our fly rail is on the stage left side. So I'm just going to zoom into that section of it. And I'm going to create a series of 4 rectangles that are basically data fields of information of what is on each of those line sets and what the various information is. So I'm going to activate my rectangle tool. Again, it's in the basic tool set. I'm going to hit 4 because I know that's my shortcut. And I'm going to start at this endpoint right here. And I'm going to come out and up and tab into it, and on my first rectangle is going to have a delta x of minus 11 inches and a delta y of 3¼ inches. There we go. My next one is going to be minus 1 foot 11 by 3¼ There we go. And my next one is also going to be minus 11 inches by 3¼ Great. Click to set that. And my last one is going to be minus 8 inches and 3¼ Click to set that. There's my 4 rectangles. Then the last thing that I'm going to do is activate my line tool, hitting number 2. And I'm going to put a line right at the center left of this onstage rectangle, extending out 6 inches. And that line is just going to represent exactly where the pipe falls in space. So each of these rectangles will have bits of information in them. This is actually where the pipe is going to fall in space, and that's the line that I'll want to reference when putting other things into the drawing. I need to move this line set a little bit, so I'm just going to draw a marquee around all of those things to select them. And I'm going to move it up. So again, Command M is my move tool. And in this case, I'm not going to move it all on the horizontal axis. X is going to stay at 0. My Y, however, I'm going to move this up 5 3/8 of an inch and click OK. And now we'll see that when I zoom out a little bit, this pipe falls right in line with my smoke pocket. That's where my fire curtain would go. So that's a good position for that one. I'm going to duplicate all of this to create another line set. So again, drawing a marquee around all of it, selecting all of those things. Duplicate being Command D. Again, that duplication is sitting right on top of itself. And now I'm going to move it, Command M. X is still going to stay 0. I don't want that to change at all, but this time my Y is going to be 6 inches. And now I've got a new set that's moved 6 inches upstage of the previous one, which is going to put this pipe 3 inches upstage of my smoke pocket, which is a great place for my valance to be. So I need to create a whole bunch more of these, and rather than go through the duplicate move process over and over, which is kind of time consuming, I'm going to do what's called a duplicate array. So I'm going to select all of these items, those 4, and I'm going to go up to Edit, Duplicate Array. In this case, I want a linear array under shape. That's going to be its default. You can see you could do it a rectangle, you could duplicate around a circle. We're doing a straight line, so linear is what we want. Our number of duplications is going to be 21. And our first duplicate's position is going to be determined by a Cartesian offset of 1 foot on the y-axis. So essentially what I have here now is I'm creating 21 duplications that are on 1 foot centers going upstage in my space. That's all set, so I'll click OK. And there are all of my newly created line sets. We need to go ahead and populate some information into these. So I'm going to zoom into my very first one. This is where my fire curtain is going to go. So I need to put a bit of text in there. So I'm going to come up to text and size. I'm going to make sure that my size is 12-point font. That's what I'm going to want. And then I'm going to activate the text tool again up here in the basic tool set. I'm going to hit number 1 because I know that's my shortcut. That's going to give me my cursor. I'm going to place my cursor randomly right there and type in capital letters FC. In drafting, we always want to use capital letters so that there isn't any confusion. We just kind of write in all caps globally. So FC for fire curtain. I'll hit escape once to get out of that, and then I'll hit X to get my selection tool. I still have this bit of text highlighted. I want to change a couple more things about it. So in its object info palette, it'll give me all of the information. And I want its horizontal and vertical alignment to both be at the center. So I'll change both of those. And now when I go to the center of it, it gives me my insertion point right in the center of that bit of text. Because our attributes are still defaulting to a solid white, this has a solid white box underneath it, which is why it's currently covering up some of those lines. In this instance, I don't want that. So with it selected, I'm going to say its fill is going to be none. Now I just have the text itself. And then I can move that to the center of this rectangle, and that references it being my fire curtain right there. So I'm going to duplicate this again, and I'm going to move it, and I'm going to move it up 6 inches, which is correct. Okay, and it's going to put it in that field there. This is obviously no longer a fire curtain. This is actually line set 1 of my system pipes. So I'm going to double click in here to enter this field. I'll double click again to highlight all of that text, and I'm going to replace it with a 1, saying that that is line set 1. I'll hit escape once to get out of it, X to get back to my selection tool. Again, I'm going to duplicate this along an array the way that I did to easily populate some of the rest of that information. So I've got it selected. I'll go to Edit, Duplicate Array. It already knows from the previous one that I want 21 duplications on 1-foot centers going upstage. Okay. And it populates all those duplications. Now they are duplications, so right now everything is line set 1, which we know isn't actually the case. So we're going to need to go in and manually change each one of these, which is a little bit of a pain, but it's not the worst thing in the world. You'll notice when I get to the double digits that because its insertion point is center, it's working from the center out. This is a lot like center justifying text in a word processing program, so that we know that everything is, 13. Everything is aligned at the center and is going to be nice and neat. Okay, so now we have all 22 of our line sets numbered, sequentially going upstage the way that we would have on our fly rail. Next, I'm going to zoom back into my fire curtain line set to create a little bit more of the information. I'm going to select my FC and duplicate it, Command D, and I'm going to just click and drag the insertion point to the center of the next rectangle over. I'm going to double click to enter that, double click to select all of the text, and I'm going to change this to DIST. Whoops, I wanted that to be in caps. DIST. Great. I'll hit escape once to get out of it, X to get back to my selection tool. This is sort for distance. It's going to be how far away each line set is from the plaster line of our theater. I'm going to select that one. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to move it over here to this center, enter into this text box, select all of it, and change this to goods. That's going to be literally what goods are hung on each line set. Is it a border? Is it legs? Is it an electric? Is it some other piece of scenery? And keep in mind that these are all placeholders for right now, and then we're going to be entering in more specific information here in just a bit. So escape and select, and then I'm going to duplicate that one more time and bring it over to this rectangle and enter into it, and I'm going to change this to trim. Trim is how high off of the stage floor a specific pipe is going to be flown. I'll escape out of that and get back to my selection tool. So there's all of the information that I'll be entering about this, about each of the line sets. Once again, I'm going to duplicate and move these. So I'm going to hold Shift and click distance, goods, and trim. I will duplicate Command D. I'll move Command M. Same distances, that already is defaulting, which is great. Click OK. There's my information. From here, I'm going to duplicate array yet again. Again, it already has the information I've already entered, so 21 duplications on 1 foot centers going upstage. OK. And it automatically populates those placeholders into those rectangles. All right. We're going to zoom in again one more time on our fire curtain. And in our goods field, we know what that is already. That's our fire curtain. So I'm going to double click to enter that and select the whole thing. And I'm going to change it to fire curt. That'll work. Escape out, back to my selection tool. So now I know that the goods that are on this pipe are in fact the fire curtain. And just to give it a little bit more visual interest and value, I'm going to select on the fire curtain. I'm going to select on the FC. So shift click on both of those. And in my solid pen, I'm going to change them to red. So my solid pen color right now is black. I'm going to click on it, and I'm just going to go down here and select the red one. Now, all of that text has turned red, indicating that this is, in fact, the fire curtain. It is not a usable system pipe in my fly system. I'm going to go ahead and save my file just because I haven't been saving as often as I should. Save early, save often. The worst thing in the world is to be working for hours on a project only to have Vectorworks suddenly crash, which it will do periodically, and that makes us real sad. Okay, on page 26 of part 1 of the tutorial, which is the last page, there is a table that lays out everything in this fly system for this project. I'm going to go through in the video and change all of those so you can watch along if you want to, or you can stop now and just reference that table in the written tutorial as to what the distances and the goods and the trims of all of the different line sets are going to be for this project. If excuse me, in the table, if sections are blank under goods and trim, feel free to delete goods and trim out of the cells. We just needed to populate something to get them into each of these rectangles, each of these data cells, so that there was something there if we needed it. But ultimately, we're going to be creating a line set schedule for the project that we're working on moving forward. So go ahead and enter all of that information, and when you're finished, go ahead and fit to objects and save like we did before, and otherwise feel free to follow along with me. Anytime I'm doing a distance, I always do it in feet and inches. Obviously, if I'm working internationally and we're doing things in a metric system, that's different. But even down on this first one that I did, 0 feet 9 inches, I always reference the 0 feet. That way there's absolutely no confusion about what we're talking about. We don't suddenly think that this 1 is related to this 9. I've seen stranger things happen. We always want to be referencing exactly how many feet and exactly how many inches, so that if there is any confusion, we can go back to the drawing and know that that information is there. When it comes to numbering electrics, there are different schools of thought. If it should be electric number 1, if it should be first, second, third. I tend to like to default to the number of the electric and then the fact that it is an electric. What this allows is if I need to place an electric between two dedicated electrics in a theater, I will number them 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 2C, and so on. So this just makes that a little bit cleaner to be able to say this is the number 1 electric. Maybe there's a 1A electric. In this case, there's not going to be, but I try and keep all of those consistent throughout my projects so that I just have a method that I use and don't have to think about it. I just know what I'm doing. Okay, that's all of my line set information entered. So I'm going to fit to objects and go ahead and save. And that concludes part one of our drafting tutorial. We'll move on to part two, which is going to be putting in our scenery and soft goods for Laughter on the 23rd Floor for our first design project, and then further on into part three, which is actually the drafting light plots part of all of this.